Welcome to Community Level, the podcast where public health research meets real-world impact. Brought to you by the Community Health Sciences Division of the University of Illinois Chicago's School of Public Health, we bring you real conversations with researchers, practitioners, community leaders, and organizations working to create healthier communities. Let's dive into today's episode.
Hi everyone, thank you for tuning in to Community Level. My name is Caroline, one of the producers here to welcome you to a very special episode. We have reached our season 1 finale, and with that, we wanted to turn the tables and learn a little bit more about the man behind the interviews, Dr. Kelechi Ibe-Lamberts. He is our team captain here on the podcast and leads another podcast, My Black is Transnational. He is a clinical associate professor here at the UIC School of Public Health, and most importantly, he is a transnational Nigerian American, husband, and father here in Chicago. His work focuses on how culture and immigration shape our health and well-being and enrich our cultures, and we are excited to bring this episode in which my co-producers, Julie and Sabrina, are asking him questions. We hope you enjoy.
Hello, everyone. You are listening to a new voice today. Actually, my name is Sabrina. I'm joined here by my co-producer, Julie. How you doing, Julie?
Hey. What's going on?
So I know you guys might be all wondering, where is Dr. Ibe-Lamberts? You have been listening to his voice the entire season, but I don't want you to panic, because we're switching things up a little bit here at the community level, and we're actually super excited to take this opportunity to learn a little bit more about Dr. Ibe-Lamberts. He's actually right on the other side of the mic. How you doing?
I'm doing good. It's weird to be on the other side, but glad to be here. What's going on, y'all?
Yeah, we're super glad to have you. I was going to ask you how do you feel being on the other side, being our special guest for today? You've been interviewing a whole bunch of people throughout the season, getting to know more about different players in public health and, the cool work that they're doing.
Yeah. It's been weird. I'm not going to lie. It's weird being on this side. I'm so used to what they call driving, right? And being the one that's asking the questions and always kind of sitting back and listening. And now being on the other side, I'm like, wow, it feels weird just being able to have to wait for the questions when I'm usually the one that has all the questions to ask. So, but I'm gonna enjoy it. I'm gonna enjoy it and play this role and see where it takes us.
Yeah, you've been doing it all season, but you actually have been doing it on another podcast. This is not the only podcast that you have experience hosting.
Yes.
And I see that you're actually wearing the sweatshirt
Always
of your
repping.
Other podcast. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yes, absolutely. Always repping. My Black is Transnational is my other podcast that I host usually, and that's the podcast that usually focuses on my work and my personal experiences speaking on the concepts of transnationalism. And it all started with me just wanting to take that work that I do on transnationalism and translate it to, just to layman's terms, so to speak, and not really have a lot of those academic experiences. But I really wanted to make people who do listen to it know that this is something that we do on a day-to-day basis. A lot of immigrants, specifically Black immigrants, have these experiences. They share these experiences, and they don't know what to call it, what to label it. And so that was just kind of how I went about creating that platform. And really, from a professional standpoint, I just was very passionate about finding non-traditional ways to disseminate information to the community. A lot of the people that listen to my podcast may not read my articles, right? And the articles that I publish, for the people that I want to serve, some people may not have access to those articles, right? As an academic. So I wanted to find more creative ways to go about sharing the work that I do, and also just having these one-on-one conversations with people just about their transnational experiences. And it's become, we're 6 seasons in, and it's become more of almost like a legacy project now. I use it as an opportunity to interview and talk with friends, families, colleagues, strangers, whoever, even my kids, right? It's kind of become this nice little time capsule, in addition to just being a platform to really bring that concept of transnationalism to life.
Yeah, for sure. Well, first of all, congratulations on 6 seasons.
Thank you.
That is big.
Yes.
Big deal.
I did hear a little bit. I heard that your daughter was actually the voice who was opening up
Yes.
the episodes. That's
Yes.
that's so sweet.
Yeah, she's been doing that, and that's been a cool thing too, right? That's kind of what I mean by it being kind of this like this time capsule, so to speak, because she gets to listen to herself from like she's been doing this since she was like 7 years old. She's about to be 14 now.
Oh my gosh.
And so she's been doing this since she was a little girl and just going year after year. And we usually, even in the season, of course, had these daddy-daughter talks that we do. And it's always nice for her to hear how she kind of saw herself at 6 and now how she's seeing herself at, about to be 14. So, yeah, that's really fun. And then even now, like with my babies, you can hear them at the end. So like all my babies are in the podcast in some way, shape, or form. So my oldest is in the beginning, but then my little ones are like now at the end, now that they're able to talk and make noise. So
like 6 to 7 years of this podcast, basically.
Mhm.
Wow, that's amazing.
yeah, since we started like 2017.
Okay.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
it's been a nice little ride.
So it looks like this concept of transnationalism is, obviously the forefront of your podcast, but also just has a really big presence in your interest and like the work that you do.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit more about just your identity as a transnational Nigerian American and what like that, especially that transnational part looks like?
Yeah, it's a major part of who I am and something that I discovered and really take pride and ownership, and it's basically the fact that I was born in Nigeria, immigrated here, but I'm also very much American. Grew up, uptown, and then moved to the south side of Chicago and spent a lot of my adolescent years 79th Street. And so I had to navigate not just my culture, but also figure out what my identity was, and I had to understand multiple worlds. I still have a lot of connections back to Nigeria and West Africa, and that's still a major part of who I am and how we go about living life here in the United States, right? The acculturation process, when I was growing up here, we weren't told that we were American. We're Nigerian, we're West African, right? That's the most important thing. So in the household that I grew up in, I was still very much so Nigerian. That was what I was told. I was told I'm Nigerian and I'm not them. I'm not African American. And so as I grew up, though, and I'm outside in society, when I'm not at home, I'm told that I am African American, right? I'm told that I am Black, and so that's a very difficult place to be as a young man and as an adolescent, trying to understand where do I fit in, because in certain spaces I was too African to be considered African American, but then when I'm in African spaces, now I'm told I'm being too American. My accent isn't there like it used to be. I don't say the same words with the same type of animation, but then also when I am in these American spaces, I'm told that the way I say certain words are still a little different. So where are you from? What's your name? Your name's Kelechi. What does that mean? Where are you from? You're not like the others, right? And so that kind of was something that I continued to observe, but didn't understand how to express that. And as I continued to learn about public health and continue to try to figure out a way to combine culture and health, and that's where I was able to capture my experience, as an immigrant, but also understand that my strong connections to my homeland plays a major role in how I navigate the world here. And we had communities and spaces where there was people similar to who I am, right? There's so many West Africans who kind of have similar experiences, and I was like, this isn't new, right? We just don't have a word for it. And so I was fortunate enough during my master's program to, I was trying to figure out what I was going to do and what my thesis was going to be about. I had seen a presentation about water sanitation, and I wanted to do something about global health. Wanted to do a program about water sanitation in Africa. Had a conversation with my advisor, Dr. Reginald Alston, and he and I had a conversation, just very organic conversation about, what do you do? Like, what's your experience like? And we were just talking about life. And as I was sharing my experiences, he was like, that's unique. What you're just describing, like, you have this access to Africa, but you also have this ability to navigate the American lifestyle, especially the Black American lifestyle. And so, like, that in itself is interesting. And so I took some time to just reflect on that. And I started looking it up and trying to figure out what this term was. And so the transnationalism it's not a new term. It's not something that I made up. It's an anthropological concept, right? And so people in anthropology have a lot of work regarding that. What made it unique for me was that when we think about the history of Black people in America, right, and what makes, and then that historical difference that we've been told, African immigrants and African Americans, that are distinguished us from one another. That's kind of what made it a little bit more interesting. And then when I even doubled down into looking into it as far as health, community health, public health, and realizing that Black people were already invisible, but African people now are even more invisible, right? That even made it more of a gap that needed to be brought to light, that needed to be addressed. And so that's kind of when I started going on this, using this term transnationalism and exploring that as a master's student. And then I was like, you know what? I want to go get my PhD, right? Because like most African immigrants, I was told that I have to be a doctor or a lawyer, engineer or something, right? So I was supposed to go be an MD somewhere, and I was pursuing that. But then at some point I found like I really want to do this, right? So the goal was to go get my MD PhD. And I was like, well, I'm just going to keep pushing that MD thing away. Right. And I'm just going to get my PhD doing this transnational stuff. And so when I got into my doctoral program, at University of Illinois, Urbana-Champaign, that's kind of where we really started hitting our mark, right? So me and one of my other good colleagues, my bro, Dr. Dade Lungashiswaka, we sat in a room. I was running a small clinic in University of Illinois. It's called the Multicultural Health Center for graduate students. So like international graduate families, and there was a nice little community at U of I called Orchard Downs, where a lot of the international families would live, international students, and they would bring their loved ones, and this is where they would live. There were homes, apartments, and so there was a multicultural health center there. And so we met at this multicultural health center, and we just started talking about like our lives, right? Like our connections, and we found so many like commonalities. He was from Congo, I'm from Nigeria, but we found that even as a French-speaking immigrant, and for me, who came from an English Anglophonic speaking country, we were like, there's so many parallels, right? Like we have to move forward with this. Like this is a thing, right? This was like our blue magic. Like we were like, we got to do this. So that was kind of where we started trying to figure out how to frame it and present it. Met a lot of resistance, in the process, but I was very adamant that this was something that's real and this is something that needed to be shared. And so that was kind of how the journey started with the transnationalism in health, and really just trying to make a case. And we found that some people had different ways to go about describing it, but a lot of people in the field would talk about like acculturation and the idea of, okay, immigrants come here and they get to negotiate and they get to pick, like what they want to do, and then at some point they gradually start adopting these westernized ways. But my argument was that a lot of Africans, or a lot of immigrants, not just Africans, a lot of immigrants could come in and they don't have to, because we now have the tools and the technology to be as Nigerian, as Ghanaian, as, Congolese as we want to be, right? We can now resist acculturation because we now have the means to stay in touch with family members back home, and we are just here to do a job. Or we're just here to make sure we have access to the opportunities to get more money to send back home, right? So there were so many more reasons than just me wanting to come in and acculturate or assimilate now that motivate immigrants to be able to come to the United States. And so that was where we started making that push and that argument that there are lots of people here who resist acculturation that you just don't know about because of the color of their skin and the assumption that they all do the same thing. You just assume that all Black people essentially eat the same food and live the same lifestyles, and we all, eat chicken and go to Harrow's. Like that's, shout out to Chicago, but we all do those things, and that's not true. So like that was where we started really making that push, and so that's kind of how we were writing and just publishing and trying to present, and whenever we had the opportunity, and that became my niche. And I just said, this is where, because I enjoyed it. I can talk about this. This is my life. Right? So I jokingly say the word me search. This is me search, right? It's personal to me. So I can talk about this for days because I live it, right? And so that was where I was able to embark on that research journey, because if I was doing something else, I probably would be trash. Like it would, to be honest, like it would be trash. Like, because I'm doing somebody else's passion. It's somebody else's, dream. right? But I found my space. I found my space in the field, and I wanted to take this on, and I wanted to grow it, water it, nurture it. And so that's kind of what has pushed me down the path to academia and led me here ultimately.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think most people, I don't want to say most people, but I think it's very common to see people from like outside of the group doing other people's work, if that makes sense.
Yeah, of course.
And yeah, I mean, it's, it's contributed to so many, discoveries and just like, increases in knowledge and awareness around certain topics. But I think it's become increasingly important for like the things that we know and the research coming from people who live these lives.
Yeah, and I mean, it's no shade to those who decide to go and do that, right? There is a need for that, and there is, when you find something, an area that we are looking for people to continue that and grow it, right? I equivalent it to starting a small business, right? Like compared to working for a Fortune 500, right? You have some people who gonna come in and they're going to work for that company and continue to progress it, and they love it, and they find their way to grow in that area, and they rise up the ranks, and you become CEO, right, of that company. You wait your turn.
Right.
And then you have others who decide they found something that they want to build, and they want to grow it from the ground up, and they want to start their own little business, and they enjoy that day-to-day grind of growing it into what they hope would be a Fortune 500, right? So for me, that's kind of how I looked at it, right? Where it was like, this is my Google, this is my Facebook, whatever you want to call it. But this was something that I saw, that I felt, and I would ask many times, like, hey, do you know anyone that's doing this? Or have you seen anyone that's kind of found this or thought, like, it was like, nah. Like, okay, we know some transnational, we've seen some transnational work. We've seen scholars who have done work on transnationalism in the context of, economy, or in the context of just, like I said, anthropology, right? But no one's talked about it in the context of health, and no one talks about it definitely in the context of Black people in across the world in the United States. So it was like, oh, this is good, right? Like, we gotta, and if we don't speak for it, no one else will, right? And so that's another thing that made it unique, is that the African immigrant or the Black immigrant experience is one that only people from that community that can serve as agents of that community are the only ones. The only ones that can speak for us is us, right? And so that's where the momentum or the impetus really started to grow, is that I really was driven to have more people find a way to tell their stories. And that's kind of what also led to the podcast. We're going back to that, but just really wanted to say, hey, if we don't find ourselves visible in the world of academia, then we're probably going to never be visible, right? Because the only people that can really distinguish, like, the African immigrant or the African experience and the African American experience are those who've actually had those conversations, right? Who've been able to tell, whether it's their own personal experience or through their own interactions. And I believe that academia is not that. It's not that holy for us not have those conversations. Like, it's we spend so much time talking about the ivory tower, but this is an important thing. In order for us to be able to get funding, to be able to get resources, we have to speak that language. Right. So it was my way of also, and this is still something that I pushed to the elders in my community, right? Because to this day, my mama still barely know what I do, right? Like, but like, this is something that I still push to African immigrants here, is that gone are the days where you have to continue to just give your children 4 options, right? Like, going into research, going into public health, like, don't underestimate what that's going to do for not just like us, but specifically you, right? And so, like, even with my mom, like, I would tell people all the time, like, my mom has been here for, I would say at this point, I was definitely past 30 years, right? And she still eats African food, but when she goes to the doctor, like, she can't tell them that eating jollof rice and amala and efforiro is what she eats. And so what does that mean to that provider when she finds herself having high blood pressure? Right. Like, what type of service and care will she get? She doesn't eat the African American food because for her, she doesn't identify as African American. She is Nigerian Ghanaian, you know what I mean? And so when I think about who's going to take care of them, who's going to advocate for them? Right? It has to be us, the ones who have the skills and the tools to be able to now take whether it's public health language or, academic language or whatever, grant writing skills. But we have to utilize those skills that we've been trained to have to now speak and, protect those family members and loved ones that are aging and still engaging in these behaviors that are true to who they identify as. Mm-hmm. And now how do we find a way to make sure that they can be able to age healthily?
Right.
And so that was another driving force. So they're like all these things, it's like an amalgamation of all these different things that just led me to say like, we have to do this, right? If not, no one else will. Or if somebody does, then it's probably going to be a while back. But while I'm here, while I'm here, we got to continue to push this agenda forward.
Right.
Yeah.
So what are some common misconceptions about immigrant and refugee health that you aim to challenge?
That's a good question. I think the common misconception is that all immigrants that are coming in to the United States, I think a lot of people do confuse immigrant and refugee status, right? And I think people believe that all immigrants that are coming in are in dire need, like there's a desperation, right? And we don't want to necessarily make it seem like people aren't fortunate to be able to migrate. But I think sometimes people underestimate the education level, right? Of a lot of immigrants that are coming in. A lot of immigrants are leaving their country and they were at the top of the top. And a lot of them do have to humble themselves. Even refugees, let's just, I think, but there is this misconception that a lot of refugees and immigrants are so low in terms of education and literacy and things of that nature that they become treated like... they become ostracized in a way. And I think that's one of those things that I try to dispel, is that especially for West Africans, a lot of West African immigrants come in and are highly educated, doctors in their field, lawyers, military experts, right? Like a lot of them are coming in, but they understand that whatever situation, opportunities, right? And again, I can speak specifically for Nigeria, where you're talking about the most populous nation in Africa, if not, one of definitely top 3 in the world, right? And so opportunities are not there. People want to use their skills for opportunities to progress themselves, their families, but they don't present themselves there. And they're like, well, I'm going to go somewhere where I can be valued, where I can use my skills and be able to continue to, create affluence for my family and friends and loved ones. And so a lot of them travel and they seek those opportunities, but they realize that they kind of have to start from square one again, right? So you find yourself driving a cab, even though you are you were a surgeon in your home country, but now you have to come back and drive a cab for, to be able to make some money, make ends meet, or you have to do that so that you can support yourself to take the step one again. Right. So I think sometimes people don't know the whole story. And I think they do assume that a lot of immigrants that come to the United States are not they're not lettered, they're not educated, they're not, they don't know anything. And I think that's going to be a problem as well.
Yeah, for sure. I think a lot of people tend to kind of just put them in a box. And kind of just view them all on the same level or wavelength. But in reality, everyone is coming in with their own story, their own background, their own reason for leaving in the first place. I think that's a super big issue that needs to consistently be challenged.
You kind of touched on this when you were talking about your mom going to the doctor.
Okay.
But how do transnational ties influence health behaviors among Black immigrants? And why is that important to public health?
Yeah, I think it is important because a lot of us, and I say us because I am part of this, our culture dictates a lot of the choices we make, right? And so when we come to the United States and we're still, we come from a culture where, for example, the matriarch, the grandma still has a lot of, influence on what decisions are being made, or the grandparents, right? And so if you come to the United States and you have some health, issues, or there's some treatments or whatever, some herbal medicine or something that you might have relied on when you were back home, being able to have access, because you can either go back whenever the opportunity presents itself, you could travel back and pack it up and bring it here, or B, you can have someone come visit you as a relative, and it might be your mom, it might be grandma, and they'll bring all those goods and products that allow you to still remain connected.
Right.
You come in and you find a place to store it, right? And you can store it. I can guarantee you, any African immigrant that you talk to has a deep freezer. They have it, right? They all have it. And immigrants too. Again, I'm speaking, from African perspectives because that's my lens, but any immigrant that I've talked to, I find out we lead these parallel lives. Mm-hmm. But many of us have deep freezers because space where we can be able to store a lot of these goods and products that are nostalgic to our homeland, right? Because either the world market is really expensive, so sometimes we tend to try to go over the middleman, so to speak, and we go back home and we bring these goods and products here, or we just stay in touch. So when we're talking to family members on WhatsApp, because all of us have WhatsApp as well, right?
100%.
100%, right? Yep. So and these are things that help maintain the transnational experience. But when it comes to health, you're able to have conversations on your WhatsApp group or call your mom or your aunties and uncles or people that are really revered in the family and be able to talk to them about certain things, and they're able to say, hey, look, do this, right? And it showed itself a lot during the pandemic, right? A lot of West Africans during the pandemic, even people who were in the field as nurses or doctors or whatever, right? A lot of them would still rely on these traditional home remedies rather than just going to get a vaccine. Not saying they didn't, right? But that was kind of like another way to address the symptoms, right? So that was something that we would have in our WhatsApp group where you would have family members say, oh, please make sure that you get Mentolatum, which is like the equivalent of Vicks, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah, you know what it is, right? Get Vicks, and you make sure that you burn the COVID, and then you put your head over the towel and you inhale it, or you cut this ginger, and there's so many things that you do. There's a thing that we also my mom used to give us is called agbo, which is it's like this very bitter concoction, man. It's horrible, right? But it was good. Like, it was crazy. Like, if you felt like you ate a lot of sweets or you had a lot of like really, really dense food, right? That was something, and you felt really slow and groggy, right? That was something my mom would always give us. Like, if we just had a day where we ate a lot of McDonald's, had a lot of sugar, like, definitely we're drinking some of that, right? And as you grow older, you're like, man, okay, it wasn't that bad, right? It tastes horrible, but the effects. And so those are things where, as you get older, you're like, man, I need this for my kids. Like, grandma, where can I get this from? Oh, when I go to Nigeria, I'll bring some, right? Like, so that's kind of how we find a way to maintain those things. So we don't have to go to Walgreens, right? Unless we are told like that's mandatory. There are ways to kind of overcome and utilize your connections to your communities here or your communities back home, and you get to pick and choose. Do I really want to take Robitussin, or do I take this particular medicine that I can get from home, right? And so that's kind of how it influences. And then in terms of diet, in terms of physical activity, because we have these connections to our homeland, we don't have to rely on what's in front of us. We can easily just go and rely on the connections that we have to our family members and our networks that are back in our home country. And they dictate, and if we trust them the most, then we're probably going to rely on what they say compared to maybe someone that's here in the United States and says, hey, yeah, go ahead and take these lozenges for your sore throat. And like, you know what I mean? And so that's where, and I'll stop here, where with the culture piece, where there's also a tendency when, for most immigrants, when you tell someone to go to the hospital, if I go to the hospital and I'm an African immigrant, and I go to the hospital and the doctor didn't give me medicine or prescribe something for me, I'm upset. It was a waste. You know what I'm saying? Like, that is something there's like, no. Like, so, like, I just wasted my time because I could have been working. I could have been doing something, right? And that's something where I think for most immigrants, that's something where if they talk to somebody back home, guarantee somebody gonna have something for you to, like, I don't know what it is, but I have something for you. Yes. Like, that I'm gonna send to you that you should take or make or do, right? And that in itself, from a cultural standpoint, creates some level of relief. It could just be pure water. You didn't even know what you just drank, right? But the placebo effect of the cultural, like, influence of this can play a role in you saying, okay, I just drank this crushed leaf from a tree outside, right? But my grandma told me to drink it. You don't know what you just drank, but like just the idea of you having to take something because you didn't feel good, that plays a role too.
Provides
right?
like some type of peace of mind.
It's crazy, yeah, it is. Now, I'm not encouraging people to just go outside and go like pick a leaf and crush it and drink it, but I'm just giving you an example as far as how the reliance on information and also knowing that having that cause and effect of if I'm sick, I take medicine, and that's the only way to get treated. Mm-hmm. That's the mentality that I think we are trying to, at least the newer generation of transnationals in the health field, we are trying to dispel, and we're trying to educate and kind of reframe. But that's something that's heavily prominent in the community.
Yeah, and I feel like that kind of opens up space for kind of a discussion around the state of public health and healthcare in general, and how people and providers and public health practitioners in that space deal with or directly address like immigrants or refugees or people just from other cultures and backgrounds utilizing their own healthcare system almost, like whether it be like shamanism or like herbal remedies and stuff like that, and like how to kind of balance that, because I feel like as practitioners or healthcare providers, there can be a lot of pushback against certain practices and be like, well, no, that doesn't do anything. Yeah. You need to be doing XYZ instead. So what do you kind of think like public health or healthcare is doing right? And what do you think they could be doing better at when working with people of different cultural backgrounds and immigrants especially, who still have really strong ties to their cultural ways of treating illnesses and health behaviors and stuff like that?
I think public health has taken and made, even community health specifically, but the field of public health has made significant strides in at least reaching some high level of cultural competency. What I mean by that is they do now understand that, immigrants have these cultural like practices that are different from one another. I don't think they know the depth to what it is specifically in the Black community. I think they're still learning the depths to how different our cultures are and how it distinguishes us. But I think now with other prominent immigrant communities, there is more of an understanding, and there is more of an effort that's been placed specifically with Latino population, and even in the Asian communities now, there's more of a significant effort that's put to understanding and distinguishing these cultural differences and how they play a role with health, and understanding, language is a factor, having translation services and things of that nature, and understanding like communication and how to properly do that in some communities. I think those strides are being made. It was very interesting. I was part of a panel, and I do have to always give a shout out to Minnesota. Like Minnesota, even though I know they got their thing too, but University of Minnesota, their Refugee and Immigrant Center, they make significant efforts to try to develop communication tools and toolkits because Minnesota is it's a huge diverse community of immigrants there, specifically those Somalian and Ethiopian specifically. But so they've made significant strides in trying to develop tools and just ways to be able to communicate information that's relevant to raising awareness in those respective communities in their own respective like cultural ways, right? And so those are some of the strides, but I still think that there's more that can be done as far as building and creating more trust, right? And that means being able to bring people from the community and we need more champions. That's essentially what I mean, right? We need public health to be able to create and build relationship with community leaders from those respective immigrant communities, and be able to have them or identify certain champions that can help the navigation process from a bilateral standpoint, right? Not just a one-way street, but like two ways. We are able to get public health into our communities, but also bring our communities to public health, where that people can have access and people can do the things that they do, but still feel as, as Nigerian as you want to be, or as, Chilean as you want to be, whatever. But I am practicing public health, but I still feel like I have not lost or sacrificed who I am, right? And that's a major conversation that I have a lot with some immigrant communities, is that when you start doing certain things, especially those who are heavily like resistant to acculturation, like when you do certain things, you're like, oh, I don't do, that's what the Americans do, right? And so being able to allow that individual or those community members to be able to do those things and not feel like they sacrifice their national pride or their patriotism, so to speak, I think is major, because I think many people want to hold on to their culture, and I always understand it, because once you take someone's culture away, that's taking away a lot, taking away a significant part of who they are and what they believe in. So people hold on to their culture more than anything, right? And so being able to engage with public health, with community health, while still feeling like you are not just losing your culture, but actually enhancing it, right? And making it more dynamic than it's ever been. That's what we're hoping. That's what I'm hoping to be able to influence public health and community health. That's the direction that we need to continue to go and grow into.
How do you incorporate your experiences to your students in your community health science classes that you are teaching?
That's good. I don't know. I mean, and I say that, I mean, I know, but like, I think it's very natural. I've been fortunate enough to be able to have students that allow me to be able to bring my authentic self to the classroom. And a lot of my authentic, teachings are really based off that experience. I think when I have these conversations in the classroom, I'm able to bring real life examples of my navigation, or whether it's someone that I know or situations that I've experienced or work that I've done. I'm able to bring those to the classroom, and so it doesn't. And most of the time when we have those conversations, it doesn't feel. I rarely have conversations in my classroom that feel distant. I don't with my students, right? When we have class discussions, they connect us in some way, shape, or form. We don't tend to talk and just speak like we all don't know each other. I think this familiarity that essentially is created, and a lot of that is driven by just my own ability to be able to bring my experiences to the classroom and share it, and especially when we have conversations that relate to culture and health, I'm able to really tap into those things and really not just bring it in and share it as the end all be all, but also just being able to learn from you all, the students, and say, hey, what are your experiences? And we try to find those parallels. We try to find those similarities and differences, or you learn new things, right? Like I learned from Julie. I ain't know where she came from, and she shared her experience as far as her connections, right, to Nigeria, and which is always a pleasant surprise, right? And those are the things that also make it very, very fun. So I think being able to teach and when being in the classroom, I've been able to just apply by simply being myself, and just being in a space where I've been able to just do that and share that. Yeah,
very much so. I remember probably the first day in 421 in the fall of, feels like it was forever ago, but I remember you asked the class, like, how do you identify? And I remember thinking like, oh, I'm gonna like this class, because I think it's just really important to understand how people identify and where they're coming from with it. And I just thought that was really important. I still remember that.
Yeah. And that's not a straightforward question at all either. No. It's like, okay, well, we got this and this and this.
Yeah, but what's interesting? I started asking that question because when I started teaching before I came back to Chicago, when I was up in upstate New York. I started asking those questions because I was in spaces where the majority of the people were white, right? And I think I think it allowed for my students of color to feel like they can be able to, one, represent themselves, but then also like it allowed for us to have a real conversation with students that were white, because what would happen is a lot of students would be like, oh, just white, or just white, and I'm like, like. Right. Being white, right? Like, it's not the same as white supremacy, right? Because white supremacy ain't only just made for white people. Like, what I mean? There are people that are non-white that subscribe to white supremacy,
right? It's like an institutional thing,
right? So saying just white, so it allows, sometimes we end up having this really cool dialogue of just saying like, no, you can't just be like just white. Be proud of where you are, whether you're from Scotland, Ireland. Be proud of your tradition. That doesn't. It's not synonymous to white power, right? And so it allows for us to be able to break those walls down, and allows for us to now have a real conversation that allows us to now have, potentially, in the ideal world, a really multicultural classroom, right? And we can really tap into those cultural experiences when we're talking about public and community health. Like I was telling some students, some prospective students the other day, like I think what makes community health special, maybe compared to the general public health and the other areas in the field of public health, is that we allow ourselves in community. It's very hard to avoid community health without tapping in some way, shape, or form to culture. Because in the community, culture is kind of what drives it. If you're talking about being part of a community, it doesn't have to be the most ethnic or anything to that, or what we jokingly would say the most seasoned, but every community that you identify or connect to has some shared values. That's what kind of helps create the community, right? So there's a way that in some weird way, culture has to show itself. And so you find ourselves having some type of cultural conversation. And so if we can't get to that multicultural space, then like I say in the classroom, like if you can't allow yourself to share and do that, then the classroom's not going to be as fun as it could be. Right. So it really is up to me to try to create that space. But when students feel comfortable enough to be able to allow themselves to really tap into how they identify their cultural experiences and all those things, and the classroom is such an amazing place. Yeah.
So I feel like we've talked a lot about where you're at right now and like the work that you've been doing, your current interest, your teaching. What I'm really interested to know is that I was looking at your LinkedIn. You are an OG public healther.
Me? You think so?
Yes, because you got your bachelor's in community health. And I feel like a lot of people in public health tend to kind of stumble upon it like later in their career. They engage with it kind of like accidentally, and then it opens up this like huge worldview for them, and then they just like go forward into it. But kind of seeing that you kind of started your higher education in community health, that's really interesting. And I kind of wanted to know a little bit more about like what was your intent to go down that pathway? Is there an interesting story behind that? Yeah,
well, so I think, again, like I said earlier, a lot of us come in wanting to be in, doctors and in the medical field, right? Medical doctors and psychologists or whatever. Well, not even psychologists, but like engineers and So I, of course, told my parents that I was going to be an MD. Don't know what MD. I was going to be something. So at the very least, a general practitioner, right? And so, but when I got in, man, God, like the prerequisites, the courses, biochem, like all those things were cool, but I definitely remember orgo. And
I never even made it to orgo.
Girl,
I switched my major.
I remember being in orgo, the first class, and I just remember looking at the syllabus. I remember listening to the professor speak, and I just looked at the syllabus, and I just remember like getting up. And I was like, nah, that's not what God wants for me. Like, I just walked out. Like, I was like, I'm not coming back. Like, the medical field is cool. And if I need to, like, I'll do it. But I don't know. Like, and then, so I still tried to find ways around it just because I wanted to make my parents proud. Like, I wanted to say I saw it through, right? You never want to come home empty handed. And so I got into community health still thinking, okay, this might be a way to get my health knowledge up. But when I got in there, I really enjoyed it, right? Like these were the things that I wanted to do, just learning about human sexuality, drug use and abuse, right? Learning about community engagement and community trust, because I come from a country where we believed in interdependency, right? So we didn't believe in everybody in their own silos, right? And so I came from about the village, that idea of being a village. And so community health kind of it drew me into that, because you weren't doing it for yourself. Whereas on a clinical standpoint, you've always been trained to work on each person on a case-to-case basis. Right. Where I felt, man, what can I do for the general mass? So, I was still trying to figure it out. I'm not going to sit here and pretend like I had it all figured out. But I understood what community health from that standpoint was about, and I liked it. I liked that it was for the collective. I liked that it was about not just me doing something for you directly, but me doing something for everybody. Mom and them, right? Like auntie and them, right? Everybody. And so if I can be able to do one great thing that can impact the masses and lead to continued positive health outcomes, then maybe I'm on the right track. And so I was like, I'm going to stick with this rather than go back and, crawling to bio or chem. I'm going to stick with this because I felt like at the very least, this will prepare me to be able to have the best of both worlds. So I was still on that medical track all the way to the very end. And like I always say, I give props to my wife. My wife saved me, right? If I met her, she's a physician. And so I met her on the cusp of getting into my doctoral program, and I was still sticking to, my community health and learning all about that. And I wanted to bring the best of both worlds. That was my argument, with that I can bring public health and community health. I can bring public health and medical health together, and I can be able to do the masses. I can be able to understand the individual. Like, that's what most people argue.
Right.
But I just remember having a conversation with her, and she, I explained to her what my plan was. Like, yeah, I'm gonna get this degree. I'm gonna get my doctorates, and I'm gonna go to medical school, and then I'm gonna, do that for 4 years, and then I'm gonna maybe do residency, and then after that, I'll just go back and like do research and just, do community health. But I don't want to practice that long. And she was like, so you gonna go to medical school? You're gonna pile up all this debt, get yourself in all of that, go through this hell that I'm going through, excuse my language, but like go through all of this, and you're not gonna practice at all? You're just gonna go back? She was like, that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. And I think like most people will be like, oh yeah, that's really cool, like that's really awesome. But she's the first one to really tell me that my idea was dumb. And I was like, it's, and I had to reflect, and I was like, you're right. Like, I really don't like this. Why am I doing this? Who am I trying to impress, right? Like, and so that's when I knew, like, I was like, man, she legit the one, right? Like, so she's telling me the truth. I need somebody to tell me the truth about what I'm doing, right? And so she's the one that told me, like, listen, this doesn't make any sense. If you're going to practice, like I understand you want to do research and all of that, but she was like, if you're not going to go actually be an actual MD, then just be a PhD, right? And just live your life.
Right,
and
there's nothing wrong with that.
There's nothing wrong with that, right? Go collaborate with a doctor, like go, and then I started looking at that and talking, and I was like, she's 1,000,000% right. And so I remember having that conversation with my mom, like, yeah, Mom, I'm not doing this MD thing. Like, you're going to have to take this PhD. And and she was like, and that was the stage where she was like, well, whatever makes you happy, which blew my mind, right? Because I was like, you had me going through all of this, and then now you're like, whatever makes you happy. But it's true, right? And so I believed and I loved community health. And I'm so glad that I didn't pursue medicine, because what I do and the impact that I believe I can have and I've had is so tremendous. And I found this lane, and I found this niche that I just feel will at some point be a game changer for immigration and refugee health when we start to think about how it evolves. So I'm very fortunate.
Yeah. If you're listening and you're a student who has the exact same plan that Dr. Ibe-Lamberts had all those years ago, take this as your sign to keep it real. Please
be real with yourself. Be real. Have people and surround yourself with people that are going to keep it real with you, because that will save you from a world. I mean, I can imagine. I've mentored, and I've had so many people in my life that have gone through medicine and are in the field, and some people who left the field and they went through stuff where I'm just like, couldn't be me, right? Like I just the ups and downs of it. And so glad that I'm able to be able to find something that I can find some level of satisfaction with.
Yeah, for sure. That's really awesome. And we're having such a good conversation. Yeah. But unfortunately, we are running out of time. So, Julie, you want to wrap some stuff up for us?
Yeah. So, what's next for your research or your podcast? Are there any new projects on the horizon that you're excited about?
Yeah, there's a lot of things. That's happening with my work, with my project. So for the sake of time, I'll just try to highlight some of the big ones, right? So as far as my research goes right now, we're definitely shifting and working a little bit more, and we've gone into the aging field. So we're focused on the aging population and senior members, aging adults, like older adults, and we're trying to find ways now to develop information and interventions or programs on how to properly support elderly African immigrants that are here that say they're going to go home but can't go home for whatever reason. How do we create a space for them that's a home away from home that allows them to age healthily? That's one. The other thing that I'm really working on as well is my lab. We've developed our lab, the TRAP lab, the Transnational Research and Practice Lab, and so that's something that we're working, and that's been developed, and we're growing, and it's a space for me to be able to bring in more students, and it's not restricted to just African immigrants, but anyone that really is interested in immigration health and that have these personal or just care about the transnational experience. It's a lab that allows for us to be able to engage in that type of work and develop future researchers, because I believe, like I said, the people that can speak for us is us, right? And so the only people that can really bring those transnational experiences to life in research are those who live it or are really, really immersed in it. And then lastly, my biggest pride and joy right now that I'm really trying to put together is it's a consortium that I'm working on right now. So right now I got funding from the Institute on Research and Race and Policy, IRPP, to start a meeting of the minds for putting together the first ever African Immigrant Consortium. It's called the Interconnected African Wellness Assembly, also known as IWA. And the goal is to be able to bring in various community, academic, practitioners and providers, advocates, but all people who care about African immigrant health and welfare. We want to be able to bring together this meeting of the minds to be able to start creating repositories, data sets. We want to start being able to create visibility for Africans in the health field. And it's not just through, this type of research where we continue to bring culture, but we need to start having data, hard data. We need to start bringing in more resources. We need to start being able to show the versatility and the interconnected influences on these different fields and African immigrant health outcomes, and academic community partnerships need to be established. So we're hoping to be able to get that going sometime in the next couple years, but that's when I'm really, really hoping that we can get going, because that's where I think we'll be able to start working towards creating not just a Midwest consortium, but we're hoping to be able to do a longitudinal, national data collection for African immigrant health statuses and be able to put that out there for people to see. And that can lead to hopefully a world of opportunities for future scholars and also future community members who want to do, programs that get resources and support moving forward. Yeah.
Oh, that sounds amazing.
Thank you.
And Trap Lab is an awesome name. Love that.
Yes.
Finally, what advice would you give young scholars or students, especially from immigrant backgrounds, who want to make a difference in public health?
Man, I would say, again, make it personal. I really, really believe that. That is a big thing. I mean, there's so many other words of advice, but the most important thing that I'll say is make it personal and find people, find mentors, find people who will support you and be willing to look out for you. Believe in that more so than the institution. Meaning, if you have to pick between Harvard and a smaller institution like where I came, SUNY Cortland or whatever, find a space where the person that's going to mentor you is going to give and maximize their resources to enhance you, then go into the school that has just the the pedigree, so to speak. Again, no shade to them, but again, thinking about where you're at, and when you think about growing and in the field, if you really want to go to Harvard, you'll get there. They'll be there to take your money regardless. But so that's not going to be a problem. But if you really want to make your name in the field, being able to start having people that really will and want to see you and envision what you're going to be, surround yourself with those type of people and believe in them and trust them. But also, again, stand your ground in things that you believe in when it comes to research. If you believe in something and you're passionate about it, stand your ground, 10 toes down, but because it's personal, right? If somebody is attacking your personality and your character, you will stand on your ground and defend it. Same thing you should do with your research. Stand 10 toes down, believe in it until somebody proves you completely otherwise and shows some major character flaws. Stand your ground and continue to support your research, because a lot of people are going to tell you that what you're doing doesn't make sense. That's because they're not you. They don't live your experiences, right? So, yeah, that's what I would say.
Words to the wise,
Yeah.
for sure. Dr. Ibe-Lamberts, where can students or anyone who is interested be able to engage with your work and connect more with you?
Yeah, I mean, definitely find me on LinkedIn. If you look me up there, if you want to learn more about the lab, you can reach out to us, traplab@uic.edu. You can find me on Instagram, or the podcast for sure. Black Transnational Podcast is where you can find us there. You can also check out our website, www.blacktransnational.com. So that's where you can learn all about what we're doing. And if you want to reach out and learn more about the lab, you can reach out to us there. Definitely go on UIC's School of Public Health website too if you want to learn more about the bio. But those are all the different ways in which you can reach out to me.
Dr. Ibe-Lamberts, this was amazing. Thank you so much for giving us the opportunity to learn more about you on the podcast that you have been hosting.
Yes.
This has been awesome. Thank you so much for being here.
And I would be remiss if I didn't just explain and just share my gratitude to you all for all the things that you all have done to launch this, right? We are wrapping up season 1. And man, like, I'm very, very grateful that we turned a dream into a reality. When I brought this up to Dr. Shaw, I was just like, he was just like, man, I know you do podcasts and stuff. Would you be willing to do something like this? And I was like, absolutely. But I didn't know, and I had no idea what this was going to look like and what this was going to be. And I would not be able to have this successful, what I consider successful, first season if not for y'all. And so I'm very, very grateful. I'm very appreciative. I'm very proud. And just know that I'm very indebted to y'all for being able to make this thing happen, and to even take the opportunity to be able to sit here and just be on the other side and be able to even reflect and think about my whole thing. Like, this is such a dope experience. So thank you all for just being such a great team. And shout out to Caroline as well. And she couldn't be able to be here, but amazing team. This is just going to be a memorable season for the podcast. And actually, it's going to be a little different moving forward, but we can talk about that another time. But for this particular season, this is a memorable one. It's going to be going down in history. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And with that, we close season 1. Thank you for being here. I'd like to thank the UIC School of Public Health Community Health Sciences Division for their role in bringing this podcast to life, and for our guests who have joined us this season to share their joy and expertise. In order of appearance, we had the privilege of meeting Martine Caverill, Dr. Ginny Hebert-Byrne and Emily Etzkorn, Janine Valerie Logan, Kamisha Jones-Brandon, and Dr. Olasumbo Ige. We'd like to thank you, the listeners, for your continued support and for tuning in wherever you get your podcasts, for checking out our Instagram, or for subscribing to our YouTube. We look forward to bringing you season 2 in the fall with a new set of producers. And with that, we thank you for listening and hope you have a wonderful summer. Take care.
Thank you for tuning into Community Level. If you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with others. Join us next time as we continue to explore the intersection of research and community action. Until then, stay connected and stay level-headed.